Everybody, welcome to the Abstract Podcast. My name is Greg Reffner, founder and CEO of Abstract, and we have Julie Hansen, professional actor and founder of Performance Sales and Training and author, joining us today. Julie, please say hi.
Hi, Greg. Great to be here with you and your audience.
Well, thank you for joining us. So, I've actually gone 35 years of my life, Julie, and I don't think I've ever met anybody who's an actor before. So this is kind of a cool moment for me. So I'm excited to chat with you, and especially I think, why am I bringing an actor onto the Abstract Podcast? We'll get into that here in a little bit. But you're an actor, you have a business degree in marketing, sales trainer, now author. I think there's correlations between all those kind of elements that make up who Julie is. But how did you end up writing a book, Look Me in the Eye, when talking about virtual selling? How did all these things come together?
Yes. Well, I started out in sales, and you're right. There is a correlation. It may not be obvious to the untrained eye, but I started out in sales, and I was actually I came from a buying background where people always called you back, right? And you didn't get rejected. And it was a whole different experience when I got into sales, and it was sort of terrifying. And I didn't have the confidence, and everybody else on my team seemed really extroverted. And I just thought, I'm not going to make it. So I thought, what can I do to really throw myself into the fire and, break out of this discomfort? And so I took acting classes. Okay. Sort of my version of fire walking, I guess, coal walking. And it worked. It really helped me find my voice, gain confidence, and a lot of things that I learned in the process. And so I sold and acted for many, many years, and then started my training business using a lot of the acting techniques that helped me be a better salesperson. And when the pandemic struck and I saw all these salespeople, or, everybody, business people, all kinds of roles, suddenly going on video and looking like a deer in the headlights, I was like, you know what? Nobody has the training that actors go through when they transition to working in front of a camera. And why would we? Right? And so out of that sprung on-demand video class that I created. And then I worked with, thousands of salespeople, and their questions really fueled this book that I put together, Look Me in the Eye. Just how do we navigate this new world? Because it's not a natural skill at all, as people are finding even many, many months later.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. It's very, it's a challenge to go, and especially in today's world where there's not, like, everything's text and social, like looking somebody in the eye when you're talking to them is hard enough. And then doing it virtually, kind of adding that kind of computer screen in front of you, it's a unique thing that takes a while to get used to.
Well, it's not just, and it's, getting used to is one thing, but doing it well is an entirely different thing, because the camera is so precise. It really, and we've got, our face is prime real estate on people's screen. And so everything you do is magnified. And as human beings, we read so much into, your eye contact, not just where you're looking, but how you're looking and what you're expressing on your face. So all these things that we haven't had to think about when we've communicated face to face are suddenly real issues if we want to connect with people and build relationships.
Oh, absolutely. I want to back up real quick. You said you're an introvert. Did I hear that correctly?
Kind of in between. I'm a little less introverted as I get older, I think. I think you just care less what people think. So you have that to look forward to if you're an introvert.
That's awesome. So true. Well, I'm a firm believer that the best sales reps that I've ever met are introverts, because they tend to be better listeners than talkers. So I thought that was interesting that you talked about being a little bit of an introvert.
Yeah, and there's a lot of introverts that are actors too, because it is a way to express yourself and sort of break out of that fear of communicating. So it was helpful for that, for sure.
Huh. Interesting. Okay, well, let's get into that a little bit. So the foundation of acting, so some of the skills that you had to learn, what are maybe the top 3 things that maybe you have to be able to control or be successful at to have a successful career and be a good actor?
Yeah, the one thing I learned that's really foundational is that you have to, your time on screen or your time on the stage is a very small percentage of what you're doing. And most of it is preparation and getting in role, as it were, and making sure your energy's in the right state and you're familiar enough with what you're going to say and what your intentions are so that you can be completely present. So then you can let all that preparation go when you're in front of the camera or on stage, because you can't be thinking about, oh, where do I look? Oh, I got to move here, and actually be present and connect with someone. So that was really helpful for me. And, that idea of being intentional about what we're saying, what we want to communicate to another person. When you're on stage and you're talking to a scene partner, like, you always have, some intention. I want this person to feel a certain way. I want them to get excited about what I'm saying. I want them to be motivated. And that intention, having that focus really helps your energy and the way you express yourself come out congruently, right?
Oh, interesting.
And so always being kind of purposeful about that. And then, of course, the ability to adapt, because as an actor, you have to both adapt to the fact that you're in this unnatural circumstance, and maybe you're seating on something that's supposed to be a real comfy couch, and it's actually a really hard cardboard box with a sheet over it, right? So being adaptable and still being able to communicate under some unnatural circumstances, being, the core of it is, am I communicating with these other people effectively?
Okay.
So those are probably some of the key skills.
Interesting. So in my mind, I immediately am kind of putting those as correlating to those and how they're relatable to success in sales. But I'd love to hear from you kind of throughout your journey, how you've taken those skills, applied them to your own success, and then also kind of what you're doing to help others, take those lessons as well. How's everything applicable to sales that you've learned in acting?
Yeah, it's so much of it is, because it really is about relationships and communication. So, the preparation part, especially, it really struck me. And I realized too, that as a salesperson, like, there were times where I would get up and not utter a word, not even talk to the dog, and get on a call with a customer, right? I mean, that is basically warming up on your audience. Like, as an actor, you would never wait until the curtain goes up or the camera light goes on to be in your peak state. And now, with people's attention span so low and that first impression being so important, especially virtually, you have to be there. You have to get there. And that requires some preparation. You can't go from 0 to 100 in, on demand. So that was very relevant, I think. And then also this idea of that, doing that preparation, being really clear on what I want to communicate, not necessarily having everything memorized like you would as an actor, but being, clear on my points, being confident in that, knowing how to communicate within this little box that we have effectively, without going, okay, when do I look at the camera, and am I in frame? Am I out of frame? Am I moving too fast? Is my face saying what I want it to say? You have to do all that work ahead of time so that you can be completely focused on your audience. And that is the secret to good acting. They're not in the back of their head going, okay, next I'm going to say this, and then, I need to walk over here. You have to then let all that go and trust that you have developed this muscle memory to communicate effectively.
So you just hit on something that I never really thought of before. And it's the idea of like warming up. So professional athletes, they warm up. Actors warm up. Singers warm up. What's interesting is that I can just even think back to a couple of my early morning calls over the past couple of days. I go all morning probably not saying more than 5 words, and then have to jump into a call where I maybe have to talk for 30 or 45 minutes. And I don't even think I talk to my dogs. So it's interesting that sales reps want to be known as sales professionals. And I mean, I'm even guilty of it myself sometimes, where I don't act like a professional, where I don't warm up, I don't prep, I don't do those things in preparation for the big game, right? Or for
Right,
the
right.
filming of that movie. So that's a
Well,
harsh dose of reality right there you just gave me, Julie.
yeah, well, sorry about that, but now you know, and now you can't
Yeah,
not know, right?
yeah.
But it's true. We didn't, when I was in sales, I wasn't trained that way. It was like get a one call after another, do this, jump from this to that. And when you are, especially in front of a camera, and the camera is so precise, and it's really a lie detector, you have to be on. And so you need to manage your energy and make sure that, you're in the state that you want to, you're going to be at your best at before that camera goes on, or you're technically, again, warming up on your audience and working the kinks out in those first few minutes. Because I find when I'm working with salespeople and I watch their videos, it takes them about 2 minutes, 3 minutes, maybe more to really hit their stride. And then they're really like, their confidence kicks in and their personality. But we don't have the luxury in sales, especially with a new prospect, or if you're sending a video to somebody. If it's not like from the get-go compelling, if you don't capture my attention, then you don't get 2 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people's first impressions are formed on you within 7 seconds, something like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
So, when my wife asked me in the morning now why I spend an hour talking to the dogs, I'm going to let her know that it's because Julie told me I needed to warm up before I started my day.
Yes, I'm sure she'll get that. She'll understand.
Yeah, she will. She totally will. All right. Well, let's kind of make this something that can be applied in application to our listeners. So one of the things that I've hated as part of my sales career is like role playing. It always seems so awkward and forced.
Yes.
Even more so now that there's a camera between two people. For sales leaders listening, what are some of maybe the tips and tricks that they could do to make it seem a little bit more authentic? So when they are practicing, it becomes a little bit more like building true muscle memory as opposed to just forced role play.
Right. And I work with a lot of teams on that because it's one of those things, like as an actor, you have certain parameters that make it possible to step into these imaginary circumstances and actually have a realistic exchange, right? And we don't do that in business. We're like, okay, Greg, you're the salesperson. Julie, you're the customer. Go. It's like, okay, where am I? What was I just doing? Why am I having this conversation? So what makes it more authentic is those details. Like you cannot role play generalities. You're never talking to, Greg's just a customer. No, who is Greg? Like, what is his deal? How do I know him? Have we talked before? Like, the more details that you can give someone to, create this sense of space and time is the only way that those can be effective, right?
Interesting. Okay.
That's what we have to latch onto. If I know, okay, I'm here, we're having this conversation, it's my first call of the day, we've never spoken before, but you reached out about a certain product and I know this about you, et cetera, et cetera. And my goal is, X, Y, and Z. So that's one thing, is anchoring it in some sense of detail and not this vagueness that we give salespeople. And the other thing is, because it is a very, in theater and in, on camera work, role play is used as a rehearsal technique. And it's not something that we judge people with, like, okay, you did this wrong and you did that wrong. It's for people to try things out, and it's sort of a safe space. And I think in sales, we use it as a very judgmental tool. Like, okay, well, here's what you did wrong. Here's what you did. It's like, I'm not going to experiment. I'm not going to go too far out of the boundaries and try new things if I think I'm being judged by my manager, or if I don't know what they're judging me on. And I think it's important to be clear on expectations. Like, now we're just going to work on, this new messaging. Just want you guys to try, in these circumstances, try out this new messaging. And then just keep the feedback to that. Don't all of a sudden go, and the way that you were looking at the camera was off and you did this and another thing, because again, that just doesn't create a safe space, and people can't work on all those things at once.
Interesting. So I like that you talked about make it authentic, because I can think back to, I don't know, every role playing for the past 7 years of my life, and it's general, right? Like, hey, you're talking to a prospect, not, hey, you're not talking to Sally, who is a director of marketing at this size company. This is how we came across her information. Like, it's never like that. So I love that. That's huge. I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, it does. It's like, oh, okay, I can kind of slip into that a little bit. Even specific, like, and it's, your goal is this, and you've had this conversation before, or, any backstory that you can give somebody is just a plus.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love that. Absolutely. Okay. So let's say we nailed the role playing, and the rep is still anxious, uncomfortable being on camera. What are some of the tips and tricks? And definitely for anybody who wants to know more, obviously read your book. But what are some of the things that maybe you might be willing to share that our listeners could take away as maybe one or two things that they could instantly do today to start maybe getting ready to be more comfortable on camera?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a very vulnerable thing to be on camera, because we've never seen ourselves reflected back as much as we do now. And even though we've been talking the same way in person, it's much different. The first thing that a lot of people I ask to do when they're uncomfortable being on camera is just, have you ever heard that expression, the camera really loves her? Like, we say that about people that are good on camera. Are they, oh boy, the camera really loves him. It really shines on camera. And it's not,
I haven't, no.
and it's not so much, we say that sometimes when people are good on camera, and we think it's some natural skill that, some people are just good on camera. But the thing is, it's not so much that the camera loves anybody. The camera is objective, but it's that the other person loves, or at least likes, the camera. And right now we have a lot of people on camera that do not want to be on camera, and it shows. The camera will pick up how you feel. It doesn't just pick up what you say and what you do. It picks up how you feel, because that's going to be written on your face. It's going to come out in your tone. And again, where everything is magnified in this space. So you have to develop a better relationship with your camera, because that's the lens through which you're going to connect with your audience. So I always tell people, just, restart your relationship. You obviously have this adversarial relationship with your camera. So I want you to make friends with your camera, and you can just start by just talking to it a couple minutes a day. Like, okay, hey camera, so here's what I have planned today. This seems stupid, but I'm trying to build a connection, right? Just to break that barrier, because it has to be your ally, or you're going to be forever struggling with it. So that's one place I would start. And then there's a lot that goes into adapting to communicate effectively on camera. And of course, the biggest thing is eye contact. And the only way that your customer is going to feel like you're making direct eye contact with them is if you're looking at the camera. So learning that skill, which, by the way, me just saying, look at the camera, is not going to change your behavior likely, because nobody's not heard that by now, right? And still nobody is doing it because it's hard. It's counterintuitive. It goes against everything in our body, but it's the way to make our customer feel seen and heard. It's no different than if you were pouring your heart out to me, Greg, and I was staring, and we were sitting across from each other, and I was staring at your shoes or my phone. You'd be like, does she even care? Like, is she listening? And when we're looking at someone's screen, we're looking at our screen at their image. That's the equivalent of that.
That's fair. Okay. So I need to make a call to my friend, Tim Cook, who's the CEO of Apple. Because what I need to do is I need to tell him to change this little light next to my camera to red, because human beings' eyes react faster to red and pay more attention to red than green. So,
okay. Well, That's good luck with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you know how that conversation
Yeah.
goes.
Well, here's the thing. The camera is rarely going to be the right color or the right position to match up with other people's eyes. So that's one of those things we have to develop this muscle memory around,
True.
you know,
Yeah.
where that is. I can't be sort of wondering, and am I hitting it? Um, that just takes you out of the moment, and it makes you look very suspicious when you've got kind of the wandering eyes.
Yeah, that's a solid point. It's even during our podcast that we're on today, Julie, I found that I find myself looking at your name and on the screen and not up at the camera, just
Mhm.
because in my mind I'm like talking to you, but I need to be focused more on like looking at the
Right.
camera. So
Right.
that's I mean, I've been doing inside sales for 7 years and I still struggle with it sometimes.
Well,
So
it's because we don't have any tactical direction on how to do that. And so that's part of the reason I wrote the book. It's like, it's not telling people to just look at the camera is ineffective. Like, how do I do that when I get somebody staring at me here? How do I do it when I want to read their body language?
yeah,
And so I talk about the skill, which, one of them is developing that peripheral vision, because even if when I'm looking at the camera, if I have your picture underneath it, I can see if you're making any major movements, if you're nodding, like you're nodding now, if you're smiling, if you're turning around and you're looking agitated. So I don't have to check in constantly because I've got sort of a general stream of information. Now, there are times where I do want to do more micro, focus check-ins. And there are times I can do that when it's less noticeable. And so I outline those kind of things in the book because it's just not something we've ever figured out, right?
yeah, it's definitely one of those first world problems, right? That
Yeah.
we just have started to experience as a society. So, valid point. Well, this has been awesome, Julie. I've actually walked away with a couple things. I'm gonna have to
You're going to
preface
talk to your dog.
talk to my dog. I'm gonna spend more time talking to the camera, and my wife might think I'm even more crazy now, but it's fine. So
Fine.
this has been great, Julie. I really appreciate kind of the segue from acting into sales, and there's a lot that can be learned from learning to, I guess, like being on camera, and the benefits of what that means to you in a career in sales, because you immediately become more authentic and more likable, and people trust you more, which, as we know, leads to better success in sales. So,
Right.
uh,
Absolutely. It's all about how do we express all those great qualities that we were able to convey so easily in person in this small space where people can see 15-20% of our body.
yeah.
So there's nothing natural about it. There's no reason you should be good at it. But there are people who have learned how to do that. And so, learning from those who have gone before us, I think saves a lot of time and, frustration.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, Julie, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, learn more about the book, buy the book, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Sure. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn at Julie Hansen Sales Training, or reach out through my website and connect with me there, juliehansen.live. I've got lots of posts and videos on all sorts of different tips about connecting on video, and also a link to, if you want to get the first chapter of the book free, you can go to my website as well, juliehansen.live.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, thank you again, Julie, for your knowledge and your time today. I'm sure our listeners are picking up a lot of great tips and tricks to become better on camera. So thank you again for your time. It was nice having you on.
Oh, my pleasure, Greg. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.